you're doing marvelously well. As ever, please subscribe, hit the notification bell, which is below the video down here, and you'll be notified when we have a new video. As ever, please, you can go to producelikeapro.com, sign up for the email list. You'll get free drum samples, free multi-tracks, free videos, and you'll be notified of all of the wonderful things that we do. We have an amazing academy in there. There is so many people in there to help each other. It's ridiculous. And every single month we get new multi-tracks to mix. We do mix critiques. Everybody helps each other. Everybody posts their settings. If we like something and we're raving on about somebody's vocal sound, they will post their settings and their plugins. It's an incredible place. It's a wonderful forum and a great place to share information, and everybody in there is incredibly helpful. All right. FAQ Friday, frequently asked questions. People like it when I say FAQ Friday. I don't know why that is. Anyway, should we start? How would you recommend cleaning monitors? Just a wipe or compressed air? Both. I mean, really, it depends on the surface. And when you say monitor, you probably mean the, well, there's lots of things. Let's just talk about gear in general. Okay. When it comes to things like consoles here, the reason why you might use compressed air or a miniature vacuum cleaner, or what we push for here, is a paintbrush and a vacuum cleaner, because you're pushing the dust away and then you're vacuuming it up. That's how every studio I've ever been in is. They literally go along with a paintbrush, and I'm not talking like a huge brush like this, I'm talking like a small paintbrush, and they go and they get a vacuum cleaner and they do that. You like that? Special effects. I expect to see an EDM song now with the in it. All right, and then the other thing is compressed air will just blow dust out of equipment. But you can use that definitely, but be aware that's good for like pots. That's good for like when you get actual access and you can get inside something, you can use the compressed air. If you're just blowing it over the top, all you're doing is blowing dust up in the air. Your vacuum cleaner is your best idea. Your vacuum cleaner on a console with a brush. And this is relatively clean at the moment. Oh, wait there. Yeah, Eric, you could definitely clean that screen there. As far as like the monitor's concerned, I mean, most people will use either a glass cleaner on it. Of course, you know, rubbing alcohol is quite popular on most things because it evaporates so quickly. Probably rubbing alcohol first, you know, because, like I say, it evaporates super quick and you can get rid of stains very, very quickly, and it doesn't leave a moisture or a residue that some glass cleaners might. So rubbing alcohol is very popular as well. But I say vacuum, paintbrush, you can wipe down, but use rubbing alcohol. Some window cleaners might be okay, but only on glass. I wouldn't put them on, you know, your console or any of your other outboard equipment. Personally, I would avoid that at all costs. I would keep it to vacuum and dusting. Do you usually print the overhead/room with the sample, or maybe print to a different track, or not print at all? That's a fantastic question. If you download my drum samples, go to producelikeapro.com, sign up, get all the drum samples. Few of them have the overheads and the room mics and the main sample. Not everything, but some of them. There's the wood snare in there, which is from Joe Perry's studio, the Boneyard. And I like that, and I made like a thwack snare sample before I was using a transient designer, which is like a pop, sound like pop, 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 which of course you can get with a hardware transient designer or a plug-in transient designer. And I made that by using a Waves R compressor. And the attack and release time was set so it grabbed it really fast, but it allowed just that initial transient to go through. The reason why I mention it is because I had the overheads in there and the rooms as well, because I liked what it was doing to those as well. Having that so initial attack and then this of a room, because it was squashing, because of the way that ADSR works, like attack, decay, sustain and release. The way it worked is the initial attack got through and then it grabbed it, and the decay and the sustain and the release was set really, really slow. So it just like kind of just held onto it. So as soon as it got to it, kind of went as opposed to, you know, it made the room feel bigger and longer and just was pretty special. So often if I'm creating samples, I will use the overheads and the rooms as well as the individual sample. But when it comes down to it, it's all about blending it how you want it to be. I mean, how do you want to hear it? Are you using the snare sample to have something close, or are you using it for the rooms? I, in many, many situations, have done a bit of both. What do I mean by that? Well, I've taken a close snare sound that I love and used a room from a different snare sound. Remember, both Andy Wallace and CLA don't use the close snare sound to create reverb. They don't use, well, particularly, they don't use the kick to create the reverb. If they're going to use reverb, they use it from something else. They want their close snare to be up front, and they want their decay time of their reverb to be generated from the snare sample. Andy Wallace in particular uses that. So no hard and fast rules. If you've got the options, you can play with them using the overhead snare sample and the room snare sample. Play with them and see what you get. Do you sometimes use an analyzer to get the root note / fundamentals of the bass drum exactly? I have been using the Paz frequency analyzer for whatever, 15 years or however long it's been out. Now, there are many plugins that have that feature built into it. Eric Valentine turned us on to a great one that we're going to talk about in a video very soon. There are a lot of really, really great plugins out there that have those built in. So yes, for the kick drum in particular, not necessarily, because if I'm building a track, I might be pushing towards 40 to 60 hertz on the kick drum, even if it wasn't initially recorded with that much 40 or 60. If somebody gives me a track to mix, and it's supposed to be like a big rock track, like and they've recorded it with like a 120 bump, I'm not going to favor the 120 bump. If they're trying to do metal, then it's going to be 40 and 60 hertz down there and a clicky kick. So it doesn't matter that their kick is boosted at 120. I'm not going to be keeping it. That's right where I want the low end of my guitars to be. It's right where I want the low end of my bass to be. It's a horrible frequency to have boosted on a kick in metal. However, in some forms of music, it's perfect. So there's no hard and fast rules. If you're recording a very open sounding band, again, there's maybe one guitar, one bass, drums, maybe piano and a vocal, or acoustic guitar and a vocal, you might be able to shelve it a little higher. You might be able to boost to 80, 100, 120 on a kick drum. It really depends on what you want the relationship to be with the other instruments. But in a very, very dense rock mix, especially, EDM, you're going lower. So it's not about finding a frequency and boosting it. If it's inappropriate, even though it might be the fundamental of the kick drum at 120, in an EDM track, unless it's like a dock, 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 if it's like a boom, 808, that's horrible frequency to boost. So no rules. Again, there is no rules. Finding a fundamental is good in many situations, like in guitar tones, like finding something that you want to emphasize, but it's also a good way to find something that is wrong and then boost something that's right. That's where having frequency analyzers, either like the Paz one or having plugins that have them built in, is a wonderful tool. What's your favorite song off Night at the Opera? Mine has to be Death on Two Legs, so raw. Wow, thanks for bringing it up. I remember this question coming up. The whole of A Night at the Opera to me is a complete masterpiece, and you don't have to agree. It's okay, I will still love you anyway. But it is the big game-changing album for me. It's the one that my father bought me when I was 8. I grew up in a very classical household where when the Night of the Proms was playing, for any of you that know what that is, he would take the big old Sony stereo system that we had and put the speakers either side of the TV before they did 5.1, before they did whatever, and it was a simultaneously broadcast on Radio 3, for those of you from UK will know what I mean, BBC Radio 3, simultaneously broadcast either side of our crappy old black and white TV. So we take this little TV here, put the speakers either side, turn the volume down on the TV and crank it. I mean blastingly loud, and we'd hear dum 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 dum, Land of Hope and Glory and Nimrod. I can cry thinking about it. Anyway, so my point is I grew up in this massively musical household with no musician. My dad was not a musician. He just loved music. So I like this sideline. I like this tangent because this tangent is important. You just have to grow up loving music. I have no family that plays music. I'm the first person in my family that I'm aware of that was a musician. The first person. So it's not like this gene and this genetic born with it. Heck no, I was not born with any musical talent whatsoever, but I loved it and I had passion. That's the number one reason why I have this channel, is because I believe it's all about work ethic and just applying yourself. Because I had friends that picked up the guitar and listened to Queen and Night of the Opera and started playing things because they had a developed ear. I love Rick Beato, he's fantastic. And it's great that he has an incredible ear and he teaches his kids that and all this kind of stuff, but I didn't have that. I learned the hard way. And it was hard, and it wasn't quick, and it wasn't easy, which is why I still do ear training to this day, why I still learn every song that I'm working on, that I know it, that I know the vocal melody. It's all about application. Hard work and perseverance will beat anything, any day. I am the proof in it. That's why I have this channel, because I know it will work. So Night of the Opera, as I was saying earlier, I love every song on it. And some days it's Bohemian Rhapsody. A lot of times Bohemian Rhapsody, because that's the song that blew my mind. But, you know, keep good company, you know. Take good care of those you call your own and keep good company. All of those harmony guitar parts that are mimicking clarinets and saxes and all that kind of stuff, a masterpiece. Go back and listen to it. In the year of 39, listen to that. It's a masterpiece. Prophet song. I'm in love with my car. You're my best friend. Hairs are standing on end, by the way. Look at that. Thinking about it. You're my best friend. One of the most played radio songs of all time. An absolute masterpiece. And then at the end of the record, if you've got Prophet song on first track on side 2, you've got Bohemian Rhapsody. At the end of the record, it plays God Save the Queen, all on guitar. It's a masterpiece. It's a production masterpiece. And there I am, an 8-year-old kid, Dad's oversized Sony headphones that were probably this big on my 8-year-old head, listening to it like obsessively, staring at all the photos, looking at all the guys with the long hair going, I want to be that, you know. So anyway, so my answer is like, I think every song, depending on which day of the week it is. I'm in love with my car. I mean, listen to the guitar parts and the way it fades out with those guitars swirling around at the end of it. Woo! I mean, it hits on all levels for me. Great songs, amazing production, and amazing performances. The musicality on that record is incredible. Because we all know a great song can be, pass me an acoustic. This is a great song. As soon as you're born, they make you feel small. Okay, Working Class Hero. It's an A minor and G, like 99% of it. I think he hits like an E major at the end or something. I can't remember, top of my head. The point is, it's a great song with 2 chords. It's one of the first, I think it's the second song I learned. The first song I learned was Gallows Polkas, A major, A minor, G, D. I love these simplistic songs. You do not need to be a virtuoso musician to play Working Class Hero. And yet it's one of the greatest songs ever written. Great melody, simplistic, with wonderful lyrics, amazing lyrics. The same thing can be said of Gallows Polka. It's a traditional song that was arranged by Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, and it's beautiful and it's wonderful. It's one of my favorite songs. The point is, the Queen album does it all. It has the incredible songs, but it has the musicality that I love. So it challenges me on every level. And, you know, when I have these conversations with my peers, they all nod their heads like, yeah, it hits on so many levels. It's a big reason why Queen are the #1 legacy artist on Spotify. It's the #1 reason why they get more Spotify plays than any other artist that's over 25 years old, because they have these big, big songs. It's wonderful. Anyway, thank you for asking that question, and thank you for listening to me go on my diatribe about Queen one more time. It's wonderful. It's great to be passionate about music. You can feel that. And it doesn't matter if your band is the Stone Roses, it doesn't matter if your band is Muse, it doesn't matter if your artist is Lady Gaga. If you love that music and it's why you do music, if it's Jay-Z and it's why you do music, that is valid and that is important. Just love what you do and love music. Is some outboard EQ a reasonable band-aid solution to treat a room while I save up for or build bass traps and baffles? That's a big question. We're going to do something with Sonarworks. Of course, you know, very, very well known for providing software that solves a lot of these problems. Now, I think we'll sort of table that motion to see how it goes. I do know that Barry Rudolph, who I respect greatly, who writes for us, as you know, and writes also for Mix Magazine and Music Connection. He's a really good friend and very, very smart guy. He also teaches room acoustics and room treatment at MI. So, and he has a whole video on it floating around here, up here, will be a link to that video. So check that out. I think that there are solutions like Sonarworks, but do I think that obviously, you know, I have bass traps in the ceiling up here. John Brandt is somebody we're talking to about putting, flying something above here for the mix situation, but we've had this room wrung out. We had Genelec come down, they ran the software, it's pretty darn even. There's only a bump at about 110 because we have a huge console here. Remember Mark Endo was talking about the bump of the console? But you get used to it and you understand how your room sounds. So the long, tall and short of it is ultimately, yes, guys like Sonarworks have figured this out and we will be reviewing it and talking more about it. So hold fast for that. In the meantime, check out the John Brandt video up here. Check out the Barry Rudolph video up here. Check out the different videos we've done on room treatment between those two guys. And there's more coming up about it. But obviously, yes, you can use EQ. But remember that it's only going to work in the listening position. So don't expect to go and sit on your couch in the back, and because you're going to have different problems there. Wherever you put the mic to ring out the room is where it's going to sound the best. So you put the mic about here, like sitting between the speakers, round about this area. So everywhere else it's not going to work for. Once you get over to the corner of your room where there's a big bass trap, it's still going to be a bass trap. You're still going to have a lot of bottom end going on in there. So you understand what I mean? The EQ will work, but it will sculpt it for the ultimate listening position. So as long as you're aware of that, then I think it will work. But definitely, where you can, treat your room. Check out the videos up here on the discussion, and also Barry, you know, talking about some of the stuff that he's built himself. Do you often automate sends or effects directly? Absolutely, all the time. I mean, the reason why I might automate a send as opposed to the actual effect itself is where I have multiple things sending to the same effect. Because even in this world of powerful computers, you can start running out of CPU power. And also, if I've got a huge, long, decayed reverb or a short reverb that I'm using for an effect, why do I need to create it every single time? Why do I need to create it every single time? I mean, if I have quite often I'll have like a huge reverb, like a massive reverb. And we might want that for like a snare just on a break going into chorus. So it's like down, 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 downbeat chorus out. Or the tail end of a vocal going into a bridge, like da 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 da. You know, and then off goes to the bridge. So there's two instances already on one mix that come from two different sources. So what I'm saying is I'll automate the send. So just on the vocal, I'll just turn it up, the send, just for that word, and then bring it down again. And then just for the snare drum on that send, and both of those are feeding the same long decay reverb. So that's when I automate sends and not the reverb itself. But there's other times I might automate the reverb. And that might be more about not automating the volume of the reverb, but automating within the plugin. Like at the end of a song, a few times I've done like, you know, and I've made like a reverb like get bigger and bigger and bigger than it's initially set to, because I'm extending the decay time of the reverb. You know, and that's an automation effect of the reverb. Or I might change the EQ of it so it gets darker. So it's like, another nice trick. Take the low pass and sweep it down over the reverb so it gets darker. So not only does it decay, it also goes, nice effect. That's when I might automate the reverb directly. Another great one, and we can talk about, is having the band fade down, but having the reverb grow. So what I'll do is I'll send from the mix to the reverb. However, the band will be, you know, fading down, and the reverb send is growing, and I'm in pre-fade, so even though the band is coming down in volume, the reverb send is coming up because it's in pre-fade. So there's many different instances. There's no one size fits all, but predominantly the main reason for sending from tracks independently is when I'm using multiple tracks feeding one particular effect. Are there any recording production books you would recommend? Absolutely. Number one, I really love Modern Recording Techniques. It comes up all the time. There will be a link underneath here, probably something up here dancing around, but we'll have a link here to all of the things I'm talking about. I love that book. It's been around for a long time. It's really, really good. Next up, the Geoff Emerick book. Love this book. There'll be a link to it as well, here, there, and everywhere. It's a really, really good read, and it's a good understanding not only of some technical stuff, because it's not entirely technical, but just interacting with artists and how to make music. Next up, I love the Confessions of a Serial Songwriter. That's the reason why I have it up there. So if you're a songwriter and you want to know a little bit more about that side of it, get Shelly's book. Again, another link. My personal favorite books, outside of obviously my friend Dennis Dunaway's book and Ace Frehley's book, and of course Dick Wagner's book. I love all those books because they're sort of a horror story, musicians telling you the way it was, especially in the 70s, just great reads. My personal favorite book is Phil Ramone's book. It's called, I believe it's called Making Records. Another link to that. Why do I love that? Because it's one of the best insights of what it's like to be a producer. And not just a producer like guy in the back of the room going, hey man, sounds cool, dig the vibe. No, a real producer, a guy that understands the little things from getting a cup of tea for Barbra Streisand to sitting in there and rewriting the chart on the day with the arranger while the orchestra's sitting there waiting. Everything from the subtlety of preparing the studio for the artist, getting the headphone mixes, all the technical stuff, right through to the arranging and everything in between. The psychology of making music, of recording music. Phil Ramone's book. And I was blessed to meet Phil very shortly before he died. I was working with Jack Douglas. We were mixing an Aerosmith song with the great Al Schmidt at Capitol Records, and Jack and Phil are old friends from New York. And he said to me, Phil Ramone's in the next room doing a string date. Would you like to meet him? And I was like a nervous school kid. I was like, yeah. And we went in and I met Phil Ramone. And we walked in and Phil was with the arranger holding a huge chart up, and he had a pencil behind his ear. And he pulled out the pencil and he was like holding like the arrangement here, and he was making notes on the arrangement like this and telling the arranger like, got to do this, because the arranger was, I think, the conductor as well. And he was rewriting in the things that he wants changed. And I turned to Jack and I said, that's a real producer. And Jack Douglas laughed and went, oh yes. All right, on that note, I hope you have a marvelous time recording and mixing. Please, as ever, subscribe, hit the notification bell. There's a link up here to all the things we're talking about below as well, the different books. And of course, you can go to the Academy and you can sign up for a 14-day free trial. You get free multi-tracks, you get free drum samples, you get some free videos, and you get to see inside the Academy and meet all of the other wonderful people in there in the incredible forum. You get multi-tracks every month to download, sometimes 2 sets of songs, and you get an amazing place where people interact with each other. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing. I'll see you all again very soon.